You just bought 17 graves on wheels. The words came from Claire Whitmore with a smile sharp enough to make the whole auction yard go quiet for half a breath. And then the laughter broke loose like rain on a tin roof. Ethan Walker stood beside a row of sun-faded cars behind the fence line, 17 of them, each with dead batteries, cracked dashboards, missing mirrors, and orange stickers slapped across their windshields that read non-running, salvage only. His jacket was old, his boots were dusted white from the gravel lot, and his 9-year-old daughter Lily held his hand with one small fist while clutching a purple notebook against her chest with the other. Around them, dealers in clean polos and polished boots shook their heads. A man near the coffee stand muttered, $3,000 for junk. Poor guy just buried himself. Another laughed and said, somebody should call a tow truck for his judgment. Ethan did not answer. He looked at the cars the way a doctor might look at patients everyone else had given up on. Claire stepped closer, surrounded by 2 assistants, a cameraman, and the quiet confidence of a woman whose name was printed on buildings, charging stations, and magazine covers across America. She was the CEO of Whitmore Mobility, the electric vehicle company everyone said was building the future. That morning, she had come to the county auction outside Dayton, Ohio, to buy a few failed prototypes for a public relations campaign about recycling and innovation. She had not come expecting a single father from a failing repair shop to raise his bidder card for the entire dead lot. Mr. Walker, is it? She asked, glancing at the form in his hand. Ethan Walker, he said. His voice was low, steady, almost too calm for the heat rising from the blacktop. Claire tilted her head toward the cars. Do you understand what you purchased? Yes, ma'am. 17 vehicles declared mechanically unrecoverable. I heard the auctioneer. And you paid $3,000. That's right. A few people laughed again, softer this time, waiting for him to shrink. Lily looked up at her father, searching his face for fear, but found only quiet. The old flags above the auction trailer snapped in the June wind. Somewhere behind the fence, a loose hood clicked softly as metal cooled in the sun. Ethan squeezed Lily's hand once, not to comfort himself, but to remind her that dignity was something you held before anyone else believed you deserved it. Claire's smile faded into something colder. Pride is an expensive hobby for a man with a shop in foreclosure. Ethan finally met her eyes. So is arrogance, Ms. Whitmore. You just haven't received the invoice yet. The laughter stopped. Claire blinked once, offended more by his calm than his words. Lily opened her purple notebook, and on the page was a careful pencil drawing of a battery system, a circuit map, and one sentence copied from her mother's old notes. Dead things are not always dead. Sometimes they are only waiting for someone patient enough to listen. The tow trucks arrived at Walker's Honest Repair just after sunset, one after another, rolling down the narrow county road with 17 broken cars chained behind them like a parade nobody wanted to clap for. Ethan stood in the gravel lot with a clipboard in one hand and a work light in the other, guiding each driver into place, while Lily sat on the garage steps with her purple notebook open across her knees. The sign above the bay door flickered in the evening air, half of the letters dim, the word honest glowing brighter than the rest. Across the street, Mrs. Callahan from the bakery slowed her car just long enough to stare. 2 teenagers on bicycles stopped near the ditch and whispered. By the time the last dead vehicle was lowered onto the lot, half the town seemed to know that Ethan Walker had spent his last $3,000 on a row of machines nobody believed could breathe again. His phone buzzed before he could even wipe his hands. It was the bank, then the mortgage office, then a text from a parts supplier asking if the rumors were true. Ethan placed the phone face down on the workbench and kept moving. Daddy, Lily said quietly, what if they are right? He turned toward her, grease already darkening the cuff of his sleeve. Then we will be wrong with dignity. She looked at the cars, lined up beneath the yellow security light. Is dignity enough to pay bills? Ethan smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried weight. No, sweetheart, but it keeps a person from selling their soul when the bills come due. Inside the office, the air smelled like dust, motor oil, and the faint lavender candle Rachel used to burn near the register before sickness took her voice and then her breath. Her picture still sat beside the old computer, smiling in a denim jacket, her hand resting on a toolbox as if she had built the whole world from patience and steel. Ethan touched the frame once, then went back outside. He opened the hood of the first car. Nothing. The second. Nothing. The third. A strange burnt plastic smell, but no real damage. By midnight, Lily had fallen asleep on 2 folded moving blankets near the service counter, her notebook tucked under one arm. Ethan worked under the hum of fluorescent lights, checking battery modules, fuses, connectors, and onboard logs. Each car told the same quiet lie. No collision damage. No fire scars. No flooded wiring. Just a dead system that had chosen silence all at once. Near 2 in the morning, he connected Rachel's old diagnostic reader, a gray homemade device held together with tape and faith. The screen flickered, failed, then blinked awake. Ethan leaned closer. The code repeated across every vehicle, hidden beneath layers of erased data. System shut down, authorized remotely. He did not cheer. He did not curse. He simply looked through the open bay door at the 17 cars sleeping under the moonlight, and for the first time all night, the dead lot looked less like a mistake and more like evidence. Samuel Reed came by before sunrise, carrying 2 paper cups of gas station coffee and the kind of silence that belonged to men who had buried too many truths to speak casually. He was 71, with silver hair tucked beneath an old Cleveland Browns cap, and he had owned Reed Salvage Yard long before the highway expanded and the town forgot what family businesses used to mean. Ethan found him standing near the first car, one hand resting on the fender, eyes narrowed at the small manufacturer's stamp beneath. The hood. Where did you get these? Samuel asked. Ethan took the coffee but did not drink it. County auction. All 17. All 17. Samuel looked toward the garage office, where Lily was still asleep under the faded quilt Rachel had sewn years ago. His voice dropped. Ethan, these are not random failures. Ethan already knew, but hearing it from Samuel made the morning colder. The sky over the gravel lot was turning pale blue, and the security light buzzed above them like an insect trapped in glass. Samuel pulled a flashlight from his jacket and pointed beneath the battery housing. There, hidden behind dust and a strip of factory insulation, was a tiny etched marking, an L-7. Ethan closed his eyes for one breath. Northline. The word had not been spoken in that garage for years. Not since Rachel was alive. Not since the project that was supposed to change small-town repair forever was swallowed by lawyers, boardrooms, and men who called theft and acquisition if the paperwork was thick enough. Rachel saw this coming, Samuel said. Ethan looked at him. She suspected it. No, Samuel said, shaking his head. She knew. Inside the office, Lily stirred at the sound of her mother's name. She sat up slowly, hair tangled from sleep, the purple notebook sliding into her lap. Ethan tried to soften his face before she saw the ache in it. But children notice grief the way flowers notice rain. Was Mommy part of these cars? She asked. Ethan walked to the doorway and knelt in front of her. Your mother believed machines should tell the truth before people got hurt by silence. Lily opened the notebook and pulled out a folded page from the back pocket. A page Ethan had never seen before. The paper was yellowed at the edges, covered in Rachel's handwriting, neat and careful, with a small diagram of a battery network and a warning written across the bottom. If the cars fail together, it means someone taught them to lie. No one moved. Even Samuel seemed to hold his breath. Ethan read the sentence once, then again, and the years fell away. Rachel at the kitchen table, Rachel with a pencil behind her ear, Rachel whispering that some failures were designed to look like accidents. He had signed papers after she passed because he was tired, broke, and trying to raise a little girl through the fog of loss. He had mistaken exhaustion for peace. Outside, the 17 cars sat in 2 crooked rows beneath the waking sun. No longer junk, no longer foolish purchases, no longer dead weight on a poor man's land. They were witnesses. And somewhere across town, in a glass office with her name on the wall, Claire Whitmore was about to learn that the man she mocked had not bought scrap. He had bought back the first pieces of a buried confession. Claire Whitmore arrived at Walker's Honest Repair at 10:17 that morning in a pearl-white electric sedan, so quiet it seemed to glide over the gravel without permission. Behind her came a black SUV with tinted windows, two attorneys in navy suits, and Grant Holloway, her chief financial officer, smiling like a man who had never had to wonder whether the lights would stay on. Ethan was beneath the hood of the seventh car when the tires crunched to a stop. He did not rush. He tightened one connector, wiped his hands on a red shop rag, and stepped into the sunlight with the calm of a man who had learned that fear only grows when you feed it. Lily stood near the office door, her purple notebook pressed flat against her chest. Samuel leaned against the bay frame, arms crossed, saying nothing. Claire removed her sunglasses and looked across the lot at the 17 vehicles lined in two crooked rows. For one brief second, something uncertain moved behind her eyes. Then Grant cleared his throat, and the mask returned. "Mr. Walker," Claire said, "we would like to make this simple." Ethan nodded once. Simple is usually expensive when lawyers bring it. One attorney opened a leather folder. "Whitmore Mobility is prepared to purchase the entire lot from you for $50,000, effective today. We will cover towing, disposal, and any outstanding storage concerns." Lily's eyes widened. $50,000 was more money than she had ever heard offered in their driveway. Grant smiled toward her, then toward Ethan. "That is a generous rescue for a man standing in a sinking boat." Ethan looked at the folder, but did not touch it. The summer air smelled of warm dust, battery acid, and cut grass drifting from the neighbor's yard. A loose chain tapped softly against one of the tow hooks. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound private while still making sure everyone heard. "Pride is expensive, Mr. Walker, especially for a father who cannot afford it." The words landed near Lily like a cold hand. Samuel straightened, but Ethan lifted one palm slightly, not to surrender, but to keep grace in the room. He looked at Claire for a long moment, not angry, not ashamed, only disappointed in the way people become small when power teaches them to look down. "So is arrogance, Ms. Whitmore," he said quietly. "You just have not received the invoice yet." Grant's smile thinned. The attorney held the folder out again. "This offer expires when we leave." Ethan folded the shop rag once, then twice, and set it on the hood beside him. "Then I hope you parked facing the road." For the first time, Claire had no immediate answer. Just then, from inside the seventh car, the dashboard flickered. A soft chime sounded through the open door. Everyone turned. The center screen glowed pale blue, lines of code scrolling across it like a confession waking from sleep. Rachel's diagnostic reader pulsed on the passenger seat, and in clear white letters, the warning appeared. "Remote shutdown command detected." Claire's face changed. Grant took one step forward, too quickly. Ethan noticed. Samuel noticed. Even Lily noticed. And in the quiet that followed, the $50,000 offer no longer sounded like help. It sounded like fear. Claire did not stay long after the warning appeared, but the silence she left behind remained in the garage like a storm cloud that had forgotten how to move. Grant whispered something to one of the attorneys, his face tight, his polished shoes planted too carefully in the gravel. Claire kept staring at the dashboard, at those 4 words glowing on the screen, "Remote shutdown command detected," as if the car had spoken a language she had paid billions of dollars not to understand. Ethan unplugged Rachel's diagnostic reader. With steady hands, "You have seen what I have seen," he said. Claire looked at him, and for the first time, there was less judgment in her eyes than fear. Grant stepped in before she could answer. "You have seen nothing but a corrupted garage tool misreading damaged systems." Ethan turned toward him. "Then you should have no reason to buy them back." No one spoke. A truck passed on the county road, kicking up dust that drifted between them like smoke without fire. Claire put her sunglasses back on, but her hand was not as steady as before. "Be careful, Mr. Walker," she said, though it sounded less like a threat and more like a warning. She did not fully understand herself. "Careful is how I got this far," Ethan replied. When they drove away, Lily came out from the office and stood beside him. "Are they going to be mad?" "Probably." "Are we in trouble?" Ethan looked at the 17 cars, then at the notebook in her hands. Not if the truth is louder than their lawyers. By noon, the first letter arrived by courier. By 2, a second came by email. By 4, a man from a corporate compliance office called and used words like unauthorized access, proprietary systems, and immediate cease and desist. Ethan listened without interrupting. Then he thanked the man for calling and hung up. Samuel laughed once from the workbench, a dry old sound with no joy in it. They are scared. Ethan set the phone down. Scared people reach for paper before they reach for truth. That night, the garage became a chapel of wires, code, and quiet endurance. Ethan moved from car to car with Rachel's reader, logging every hidden command, every erased timestamp, every false failure report buried beneath the factory interface. Lily sat at the counter making a simple chart with colored pencils, one column for each car, one mark for each matching shutdown. 9 cars. 11. 14. By midnight, all 17 told the same story. The vehicles had not failed naturally. They had been instructed to die. Ethan leaned back from the last screen, his eyes tired but clear. Then Lily held up her phone. She had recorded the first car waking, the chime, the warning, her father's quiet hands bringing. Light back to a dashboard everyone had called dead. I did not say anything mean, she whispered. I just said you listen to cars. Ethan took the phone and watched the short video. No anger, no accusation, just a child's voice saying, my dad does not fix cars, he listens to them. By morning, the video had spread through Ohio, then Kentucky, then Texas. People began commenting with stories of stalled vehicles, locked systems, denied repairs, and families told they must have done something wrong. One message came from a mother outside Dallas, who wrote that her son had been stranded on a highway shoulder in one of the same models, and the company had called it driver error. Ethan read the comment twice. His face did not harden. It softened, because now it was no longer about saving his shop. It was about every person who had been made to feel foolish by a machine designed to hide the truth. By the third morning, the story had grown too large for Claire Whitmore to ignore and too dangerous for Grant Holloway to let breathe. Local stations replayed Lily's video between weather reports and traffic updates. Automotive forums broke down screenshots of the dashboard warning. Small repair shops from Michigan to Arizona began posting their own stories, each one carrying the same quiet wound. A customer blamed, a warranty denied, a system locked behind corporate walls. At Whitmore Mobility headquarters in Columbus, the boardroom windows looked down over clean streets, silver charging stations, and a future that suddenly felt less certain. Claire stood at the end of a long glass table while Grant handed out prepared statements in folders thick enough to hide a conscience. We respond today, he said. We call the device unreliable, the claims emotionally driven, and Mr. Walker financially motivated. Claire looked at the first page. You want me to say he is lying? Grant smiled without warmth. I want you to protect the company. Those are not always the same thing, she said. The room went still. Outside, clouds pressed low against the city, turning the morning light gray and flat. Claire remembered Ethan's garage, the smell of oil, the girl with the purple notebook. The screen glowing with a warning no public system was supposed to show. But pride is a stubborn thing when it has been fed by applause for too many years. At 1 o'clock, Claire stepped behind a podium in front of reporters, cameras, and a polished blue backdrop printed with the Whitmore Mobility logo. Grant stood 10 feet behind her, close enough to guide, far enough to deny. Her voice was calm when she began. We take customer concerns seriously. Flashbulbs clicked. Pins moved. However, one private mechanic using an unverified device cannot define the integrity of systems our engineers spent years building. A reporter raised his hand. Are you referring to Ethan Walker? Claire paused. I am referring to anyone who may misunderstand complex vehicle architecture. Another voice called out. Did you mock him at the auction? Her jaw tightened. Grant's eyes sharpened from behind the cameras. Claire breathed once. I regret any comment that distracted from the facts. It was not an apology. Everyone knew it. Back in the garage, Ethan watched the conference on an old computer monitor while Lily sat beside him, arms folded tightly. Samuel stood near the coffee maker, shaking his head. That man behind her wrote every word. Ethan did not answer. He was looking at Claire's face, not Grant's. Something in her eyes did not match the statement leaving her mouth. She is not telling the whole truth, Lily said. Ethan closed the laptop gently. No, sweetheart. But sometimes people have to hear their own fear out loud before they recognize it. That night, he returned to the 9th car, the one that had resisted every clean scan. Rain tapped the garage roof in soft, uneven rhythms. The fluorescent lights hummed. Rachel's reader blinked weakly, then opened a directory Ethan had not seen before, buried beneath a false maintenance label. He froze. Lily leaned over his shoulder. What is it? Ethan clicked once. A file opened, and there it was, Rachel Walker's digital signature, time-stamped years earlier, attached to a hidden safety protocol and a private note addressed to whoever found it after the silence became too heavy to carry. Ethan covered his mouth with one hand. Not from shock alone, but from the grace of realizing Rachel had never truly stopped fighting for the truth. Outside, the rain washed dust from the 17 cars, and inside the 9th dashboard, the past finally turned its lights back on. 30 days after Ethan Walker first rolled the 17 cars onto his gravel lot, the county fairgrounds filled with people who had come to see whether a poor mechanic had mistaken hope for evidence. The morning was bright, clean, and sharp, with American flags moving gently above the vendor tents and the smell of coffee, funnel cakes, and cut grass drifting through the open field. At the center of the community technology showcase, behind a simple rope barrier, stood the 17 vehicles in 2 perfect rows. They had been washed, polished, repaired, and restored, not like showroom trophies, but like survivors finally given back their names. Ethan wore the same old work jacket. Lily stood beside him in a blue dress and sneakers, holding Rachel's purple notebook against her heart. Samuel stood near the first car with a clipboard, his eyes red from too little sleep and too much memory. Then Claire arrived. No camera crew this time. No smile prepared for the public. Grant came behind her with 2 attorneys and the tense expression of a man who had built a wall and suddenly heard it cracking. Reporters gathered near the stage. Former owners of the vehicles stood in a nervous line, each one holding paperwork, repair records, and letters of denial from Whitmore Mobility. Claire looked from them to Ethan. What is this? She asked. Ethan did not raise his voice. The part your company forgot to listen to. Grant stepped forward. This demonstration is unauthorized. Samuel looked at him and said, Truth usually is. A ripple moved through the crowd, but Ethan lifted one hand, and the fairgrounds settled into a waiting hush. He walked to the first car and opened the driver's door. The chimes sounded clear and gentle. The dashboard woke. Then the second car. Then the third. One by one, 17 screens came alive beneath the Ohio sun, each showing the same recovered safety log, the same remote shutdown history, the same hidden trail Rachel had protected years before anyone believed it mattered. No music played. No one clapped. It was too serious for celebration. Ethan invited the owners forward. A retired mail carrier from Indiana spoke about being stranded 12 miles from town and told he must have ignored warnings that never appeared. A nurse from Kentucky described missing a night shift after her car locked itself into service mode without explanation. A father from Texas held up a letter that blamed him for improper charging, though the vehicle had been parked in his own driveway. Claire listened with her face slowly losing its armor. Grant kept whispering to the attorney beside him, but fewer people were looking at him now. They were looking at the screens. Ethan connected Rachel's reader to the central display. Lines of data appeared behind him, clean, dated, and impossible to laugh away. These cars did not die, he said. They were silenced. Then Lily stepped forward and pressed one final key. The authorization file opened across the large screen, and the name attached to the shutdown order appeared in black letters for every reporter, every owner, every board member, and every doubter to read. Grant Holloway. The fairgrounds went completely silent. For several seconds, no one at the fairgrounds moved. The name on the screen seemed to hang in the warm Ohio air heavier than thunder. Grant Holloway stared at it, his face drained of its polished certainty, while the attorneys beside him looked at their folders as if paper could suddenly become shelter. Claire turned slowly toward him. "Grant," she said, and this time her voice did not belong to a chief executive officer managing a crisis. It belonged to a woman realizing the floor beneath her empire had been hollow. Grant raised one hand, not in guilt, but in calculation. "That file is incomplete." Ethan stood beside the display, quiet as ever. "Then complete it." A murmur moved through the crowd. Grant looked toward the reporters, then toward Claire. "You do not understand what it was like. The rollout was failing. Investors were restless. We had federal reviews, warranty exposure, supplier penalties. I made a containment decision." Claire's face tightened. "You locked families out of the truth. I protected the company." "No," she said, each word slower than the last. "You protected your bonus, your timeline, and your pride." The crowd went still again, but this silence was different. It was not shock anymore. It was judgment. Grant tried to point at Ethan. "He stole proprietary records. He has no right to possess that technology." Ethan did not flinch. Samuel stepped beside him, holding Rachel's old patent folder, yellowed at the edges but cleanly preserved. Claire took it with both hands. Inside were the original filings, handwritten notes, and dated design documents bearing two names Whitmore Mobility had buried beneath acquisitions and legal language: Rachel Walker and Ethan Walker. Claire read the first page, then the second. Her mouth opened slightly, but no defense came out. Lily watched her from beside the stage, not with anger, but with the solemn hope of a child waiting to see whether grown people still knew how to do what was right. Claire looked at Ethan, then at the 17 cars glowing behind him, then at the former owners standing with their rejected claims in their hands. "I mocked the man who helped build the truth my company buried," she said. No one spoke. Even the flag seemed to move more softly. Claire stepped to the microphone. "As of this moment, Grant Holloway is suspended pending an independent investigation. Whitmore Mobility will reopen every related customer claim, release the hidden service data to qualified independent repair shops, and restore public credit to Rachel Walker and Ethan Walker for the diagnostic architecture used in these systems." Grant whispered her name, but she did not turn around. Her eyes stayed on Ethan. "Mr. Walker, I owe you an apology that should have come before evidence forced me to be humble." Ethan looked down at Rachel's reader in his hand. He could have asked for money. He could have asked for revenge. He could have made the whole world watch Claire shrink the way she had once tried to shrink him. Instead, he said, "Make sure no small garage has to beg a corporation for permission to fix what a family depends on." Claire nodded, and the regret on her face was no longer public relations. It was human. In that quiet, respect began where arrogance ended. A few months later, Walker's Honest Repair no longer looked like a place the world had forgotten. The same gravel lot still crunched under pickup tires, the same old sign still flickered above the bay door, and Ethan still opened the garage every morning before 7 with a coffee in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. But now, beside the main building, a new training bay stood with clean white walls, donated lifts, and a hand-painted sign that read Rachel Walker Independent Repair Center. Mechanics came from small towns across the country to learn how to read the systems manufacturers once kept locked away. Some arrived in work shirts with names stitched crookedly above their pockets. Some brought sons, daughters, apprentices, and stories of customers they had almost lost because a screen said no when common sense said keep trying. Ethan taught them without pride, without speeches, without pretending the victory belonged only to him. "Start by listening," he would say, setting Rachel's old reader on the table. Machines hide less when people stop assuming they already know everything. Lily sat in the front row most Saturdays, older somehow in the way children become when they have watched truth cost something. She still carried the purple notebook, but now its pages were filled with new drawings, better diagrams, and little quotes from mechanics who called her father sir even when he told them Ethan was fine. Claire Whitmore came once a month, not with cameras, not with attorneys, but with folders, updates, and the careful humility of someone rebuilding trust one honest decision at a time. Whitmore Mobility reopened thousands of claims, released repair data to certified independent shops, and placed Rachel Walker's name where it should have been from the beginning. Grant Holloway's name disappeared from the glass offices and quarterly calls, not with drama, but with the quiet finality that comes when truth no longer needs to shout. One evening in early fall, after the last trainee had gone and the sky over Ohio turned gold behind the trees, Ethan and Lily stood outside beside the 17 cars. They were no longer lined up like evidence. They were lined up like witnesses who had finally been heard. Claire stood a few yards away, hands folded, looking at the glowing dashboards through the open bay door. "I used to think power meant being the first voice in the room," she said softly. Ethan closed the hood of the final car. "Sometimes it means being quiet long enough to hear the voice you ignored." Claire nodded, and for once she did not try to answer. Lily looked up at her father. "Daddy, did we win?" Ethan watched the lights reflect in his daughter's eyes, then looked at Rachel's name, painted above the training bay. "No, sweetheart," he said. "We just told the truth long enough for the world to hear it." The wind moved gently through the lot. No applause rose. No grand music played. There was only the soft hum of repaired cars, the smell of motor oil and autumn grass, and a silence full of grace. In that silence, regret became redemption, second chances became real, and one single father proved that dignity does not need to be loud to change the future.